Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to pick up right where we left off. So let's continue to work on the permissions for blog posts using policies. So I'm logged in with the Brad user account. If I visit my profile and click on one of these posts, well, in the previous lesson we set up the delete button here, and the logic that checks if the current user can delete this current post, if they're the author for that, that's powered by a policy. So we learned one way of enforcing or checking a policy like that. We learned how to do it in the controller. What if, however, you wanted to do it through routing or middleware? Let me show you what I mean. So right now, jump into your post controller, okay, and we're looking at our delete function. So this is the code we wrote to leverage the policy, right? We're checking to see if the current user cannot delete the post, then don't let them, just return a string of text. Let's do this. Let's get rid of this if check. So those 3 lines. So now this would be incredibly insecure on its own, right? This would let any user delete any blog post on the entire website. So let's go ahead and save that. This on its own would be a nightmare, but check this out. Right now, I want you to go into your routes file, your web.php file. Okay, and here we see the route for deleting a post. Now check this out. It's as simple as just adding on a middleware at the very end here. So before the semicolon, let's say, dash greater than call middleware. And the middleware that we want to call, so quotes, is can : delete, post. So again, this is very expressive. It almost reads like a sentence in English, right? We're saying only let the user pass through this middleware and get to the actual functionality if the current user can delete this post in question. So you can go ahead and save this. Now as the Brad user, so this is called quick test post. If I click delete, awesome, we no longer see that. Now I only have 3 blog posts. But let's make sure that Barks-a-Lot can't delete one of the Brad posts. So for example, this Brad post has an ID of 3. If I go into this window where I'm Barks-a-Lot and I visit a post created by Barks-a-Lot, but then, right click on the delete button, inspect it, edit the opening form tag so that the action posts to an ID that Brad owns, push enter. So now this should not go through if I try to delete. Beautiful. That middleware blocked us. So I really like this approach. There's no right or wrong way of how you want to actually leverage your policy checks, but I'm a big fan of this middleware approach because it lets us keep our post controllers super minimal and super clean, right? In our controller methods, we can almost live in a fantasy land where we don't even have to worry about permissions and who can perform what actions. And then all of that can just be handled from our routes file. Cool. At this point, let's change gears. Let's start working on the blue edit button. So when you click this, it should take you to, a URL. Maybe we'll just add on, /edit at the end of the URL. But it should take you to a form where you can edit the title and body values. And then once that form gets submitted, that's when you would actually save the changes to the database. So to get started, let's go set up a view template, a blade template for the edit post screen. So I would just go into my resources folder and then go in the views folder. And I would actually just copy the code from create_post_blade.php. So I'm just going to copy everything in this entire file into my clipboard and then create a brand new view and name it edit-post.blade.php. Just paste it in. And now we just need to make a few changes. So down at the very bottom on the submit button, let's change it. Instead of save new post, let's save that to save changes. Okay, and then up on the title input, we wouldn't only want the old value from session to be the value, because remember that was if you submitted a form and one of the values was invalid, but it would hold on or sort of, make the other values sticky so you don't lose them. That is great. However, this is not the create post form. This is the update post form. So in other words, initially, we're going to want to pre-populate the input with the old title value from the database. So here's what I would do for the value. The old function is really cool. If it doesn't have a value, if it doesn't find a value, you can actually provide a default value. So in the parentheses after title, we can say comma, and then if there is no old value in session, you can just say, let's look $post for title. So in other words, we'll just be sure to pass this blade template the current blog post in question. Cool, let's do the same thing for the actual body content. So down on the text area where it says old body, after the quotes but before the closing parentheses, let's say comma, $post, look inside it for body. Okay, before we save this, let's also go up and pay attention to the form tag. So we could send this result anywhere. We could send it to, update post and then, the ID number. But it's a common convention to just use the most predictable URL pattern possible and then use the appropriate method. So in other words, we know that a GET request is how you request or view data. A POST request is how you send data. There's actually something called a PUT request that's designed or it's understood to mean that you're trying to update an existing resource. So this is just a matter of opinion. It doesn't need to be set up this way, but I would send this form to /post/ and then just double curly brackets, $post, look inside that for ID. And then a traditional HTML form can only send a GET or POST request, but because we're using Laravel, maybe right below the CSRF token, we could say @ call method, and it would just be quotes put. The idea is in our routes file, we can differentiate, the incoming URL pattern based on is it a GET request, a POST request, a PUT request, a delete request, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and save this. And now let's go into our routes file and let's add 2 brand new routes for blog posts. So first, let's add the route that lets you view the edit form. So that would be route : and that would just be a GET request, right? You're just viewing the form. So it would be quotes /post/ curly brackets post, but then /edit, right? So it's the same URL as viewing a post, but if you tack on a /edit at the end, it should take you to the edit form, comma, and then just an array, post controller : class, comma, and now let's make up a controller method name. Let's call it maybe just show edit form. We can create this in just a moment, but then at the end here, let's call middleware. So dash greater than middleware, and it should be quotes can : update comma post. Cool. Now let's set up a route for when you actually submit the form. So it would be route : this time it's a PUT request. So this is where our form would actually get submitted to. So quotes /post/ curly brackets post. Same as this, only it's a PUT request instead of a GET or delete request, comma, an array, post controller : class. Let's make up a method name. Let's call it actually update. Okay, and then again at the end here, we would just call middleware to check the permissions based on our policy. So middleware quotes can : update comma post. Let's give this a save, and now let's go add these 2 methods to our post controller: show edit form and actually update. So back in post controller, let's create a brand new function. So public function show edit form, parentheses, curly brackets. Literally all we would need to do is return the view, and we named it, edit-post. Well, we do need to do one other thing. We do need to fetch the existing post from the database, right? So that we can pre-populate the inputs with the title and body values. Now, all we need to do that is in these parentheses, we can type hint with our post model, and then $post. We now have access to that item in the database from $post. So I would literally just pass that into the blade template here. So comma, you build out an array, let's say quotes post, associative array, so equals greater than, just $post. So now the blade template will have access to this. Cool. Let's test it out. So in the browser, I should be able to access the edit screen for this post. Whoops, and you can see we forgot to go edit this blue link so that it actually takes you to the appropriate URL. So let's go do that right now. You would just edit your view single post blade.php file. For me, it's around line number 7, right? It's this a element link. So instead of hashtag, this would be /post/ and then double curly brackets, $post, look inside it for ID, and then /edit. Cool. Let's give that a save. If I refresh, now if I click on the blue icon, beautiful, it takes me to the URL that makes perfect sense. Now, if I take this exact same URL in Firefox where I should not have permission, beautiful, unauthorized, not only can you not submit the form, you can't even view the edit screen. This is perfect. Back in this screen, now let's set up the controller method for when you actually submit the post. So back in our post controller, we would just create a brand new function. Oops, right, maybe above this one, say public function. Remember, in our routes file, we named it actually update, parentheses, curly brackets. In the parameter, we're going to need two things. So type hinting for the blog post in question, comma, let's also get the incoming request, with their input value. So uppercase request, and then $ lowercase request. Cool. In the body of our function, let's start by validating the request. So let's make up a name, $, maybe, incoming fields equals, and then $ request. Look inside that for its validate method, and then you give that an array. So we just have the title field, and let's say that that is required, comma, we have our body field, say that that's required. Cool. Now, before we save anything into the database, I also like to be super safe and strip out any HTML tags that might be in the values. So instead of reinventing the wheel, if you just scroll down a little bit, for me, it's the function named store new post, but we've already written the code to do that. So I would just take these two lines. For me, it's 40 and 41 that are stripping the title and body fields of any tags. So I would just copy that, and then right here, just paste that in. If you're borrowing code that you wrote, make sure you're using the same array name. So I chose incoming fields once again. Okay, and then watch how easy it is to actually make those changes in the database. We have our instance of the post, right? And because it's powered by a model, it's already connected to the database. So all we need to do is just look inside it and call a method of update, semicolon, and then you just give it the values that you would want to update with. So that's our $ incoming fields. Cool. After we make that change in the database, then let's just redirect the user back to this same form. Only we can have a little flash message that says, post successfully updated. So to do that, after this line, you would just say return, and then instead of redirect, you can actually call a function just called back. So it'll take the visitor to the URL they just came from previously, and then let's give it a flash message with the with function. Let's give it a label of success, and then post successfully updated. Cool, so if we save that, and if we test it out, be sure to refresh. So if I just add on 3 exclamations to the title, and then, a few exclamations in the body content, and click Save Changes, beautiful, we see the flash message, but better yet, we can see those values, and if we go back to the permanent URL for it without the /edit, beautiful, those changes were persisted in the database. Really quick, this has nothing to do with Laravel permissions, but if we go to edit that post again, I think it would be cool if on this edit screen we had a little link right here that says, go back to the blog post permalink. Just so you have a way of getting out of this edit screen if you want to cancel your changes without having to use your browser's back button. So here's what I would do. Back in our edit post blade template, just up at the very top of the form, so maybe before the CSRF token, I would just say, have a paragraph and let the text be small, and let's also have it be bold, and I would just have a link element. The href to go back to the permalink would just be /post/ and then the ID. So double curly brackets, $post, look inside it for ID. And then the text that you would actually click on, so in the A sandwich would just be, let's have a double backward facing arrow. So ampersand LAQUO for a left angled quote, and then just say back to post permalink. Give that a save, and now if you refresh, perfect. So if someone starts to edit a post and they don't want to save the changes, they can always just click this button to go back to the view URL for that post. And that is going to bring this lesson to a close. In our next lesson, we're going to learn how to say that a certain user account is an admin or a moderator, right? And the idea is that they should have permission to edit and delete the posts of anyone, not just their own posts. Right, because maybe someone posts something super inappropriate, a moderator user who's flagged in the database as a moderator or an admin, they should have permission to modify that post. even if it's not their own post. So we'll learn how to set that up in our very next lesson. Let's keep things rolling, and I will see you then.